Vamos.
Ah, voilà. Ça marche là.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, live on video.
Parece que ya está en marcha. Allá va. Por fin.
Okay,
Bravo.
Yes.
Bravo.
finally. Okay, live to Facebook. Okay, so Omar.
Okay. Waiting for a moment. Waiting a moment.
Yes, I have you
Okay.
here in.
Yes. Perfect. Okay. Muy bien. Ya estamos al aire. Así que muy buenas tardes desde Aguascalientes, México. Les saludamos a toda la audiencia que está presente en este conversatorio que está por realizarse en honor al legado de Etienne Decroux. La verdad, para mí es un gran honor tener a personas que compartieron momentos, que estuvieron directamente con Etienne Decroux y que estuvieron aprendiendo todo el trabajo, toda la técnica que estuvo desarrollando durante muchos años. Y ahora, a 30 años de su muerte, estamos por realizar este homenaje que específicamente hoy se cumplen 30 años del fallecimiento de Etienne Decroux. Y para ello, pues, vamos a presentar a nuestros invitados, que la verdad me siento muy honrado de que estén presentes en esta transmisión, a los directores de la compañía Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou, a Steven Wasson y Corinne Soum. Mrs. Corinne, Mr. Steven, thank you so much for accepting this invitation.
Thank you very much. And thank you to that second encounter of Teatro Físico. I think you are doing a great job. I think it's wonderful that you had that idea to commemorate the 30th anniversary of Etienne Decroux's passing. So thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this event.
Yeah, that was quite a surprise. So that came. So thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Y bueno, pues voy a pasarle la palabra también a otra persona que le agradezco mucho que haya aceptado la invitación de que pudiera moderar este conversatorio, al maestro Jorge Gallón, que perteneció a la compañía Teatro de l'Ange-Fou, y entonces qué mejor persona para poder hablar directamente sobre este tema, y que la verdad pues agradezco enormemente. Maestro Jorge Gallón, la verdad pues se lo agradezco mucho. Lo presentamos, maestro de la universidad, maestro e investigador de la Universidad Autónoma de Chihuahua, y que pues la verdad aprecio mucho el tener esta posibilidad de tenerlos reunidos a ustedes tres para poder desarrollar este tributo a Etienne Decroux. Entonces cedo la palabra al maestro Jorge Gallón para comenzar con este conversatorio.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Como saben, este conversatorio se va a llevar a cabo en inglés y vamos a hablar quizá no muy rápido para que todos tengan la oportunidad de seguirnos, ¿no? en esta conversación. Y paso ahora continúo en inglés. Okay, welcome all the people who is attending to this event this afternoon. I am glad, I'm very glad to welcome to talk a little bit with my former teachers and directors of the Teatro de l'Ange-Fou company, Steven Wasson and Corinne Soum. Welcome here with us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Corinne.
Jorge.
Thank you very much.
It's really great to see you because it's been a while. It's been a few years. So.
Yes. Okay. Well, we have several questions. We are trying to remember Etienne Decroux so more and more people know who was Etienne Decroux, what was his work, what he did, and where they can find his steps. I think that is something very interesting. For me, I know I crossed the ocean to find the steps of Etienne Decroux. And I think that if we can find those steps nowadays, it's a very, very interesting thing that we have. So to begin, I have a question. I have several questions, but the first one is for you. Who was Decroux? Who was Etienne Decroux for you?
Okay, so should I start?
Take it away.
Yeah, okay. So yes, it's an essential question. You know, Etienne Decroux for me was and will always be the person who, I would say, shaped my artistic life and being. I had studied dance before going to his school, so I had already a sort of artistic journey going, but and the head of the dance school I studied with, who was the lady who advised me to go to the Decroux school. So and the minute I set a foot in that school, I knew this was what I was looking for. This was theater and this was movement at the same time. And that man was absolutely charismatic and amazing to listen to teach, to learn from. I could not believe my luck when the first time I was in that school, and I knew this where I belonged to. And then later on, you know, as a student and as an assistant, I learned how to appreciate him even more, you know, especially as a director, especially how he created pieces on us. And he taught me a technique, he taught me how to teach, he taught me how to think, I would say also. And most especially, and then I will let Steve go from there, he taught me how to give a voice to my own inner world. So that's the most precious gift a teacher or a professor can give to a student.
Yeah, I think, you know, should I continue like that, chain together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think what Corinne just said is that was the biggest thing for me was that he opened up in my life all the possibilities that I had as a creative artist that sometimes I didn't even realize that's what I wanted to do. That or so he had the, as a director, he had a way of looking at you and seeing something that you had inside that you were not really, that you had no knowledge of at the moment. He saw you as everything, all the possibilities that were there, that were still under the surface. And then he would poke those, he would push on that. And little by little things would start to happen that you wonder where they came from. And then you say, oh, that's me. Look at the cat away from that. And you know, when I first went to Decroux, before going, I had wanted to do theater in a different way. I didn't know what that really meant. But then I started studying with Tom Lebhart, and I was with him for quite some time. But there was something inside me that was a voice saying, go to Paris, go to Decroux. And when I got there, that I understood very, very quickly. Whoa, I am in front of a giant of culture and knowledge, and I just was very, very thankful that it was someone who, while giving me a technique, also gave me the possibilities to do that which I wanted to do. So that's it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your words, both. We had a second question, but I think that you already talked about it. This question is, how did you meet Decroux? And both of you said, okay, this teacher told me, go to Decroux. and also, Steve, looking for this master after working with Tom Lebhart, is in a way, how did you meet Decroux? But this is what we heard, but do you have something special to say about it?
About how did you meet Decroux?
Oh, actually met him. Oh, geez.
Yes.
I think you'd have to say that symbolically, I met him through the work of his pieces, of his creative work. Before ever going to Paris, Tom taught me. I was the first person to be taught the carpenter after Tom had learned it from Decroux. Decroux told him, go back and take one of your students and teach that. And so he taught me the carpenter, then he taught me the washerwoman. So it was like meeting Decroux, meeting the creator, Decroux, of those pieces, before I ever met him. And then when I finally met him, when he worked on those pieces with me, when I was an assistant, he changed them around completely to fit me, like that. So it was that's me. That was meeting him, and meeting him the first time was the actual physical meeting. The first time was in the studio at Boulogne-Billancourt, in his house down in the basement. And I had been used to a very big studio and working in a big studio in the States. Then once I was there, if you remember, the studio at Decroux was pretty small. And the first class, I remember we were working on walks, and Decroux was I wasn't used to having someone that close to me when I was working on a walk, and so I would step into people and all of that. And Decroux it was the only time I think he was not very happy with me, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're walking over everyone," like that. So that was my introduction, like that. But eventually that cleared itself up, like that. So yeah.
The physical encounter with Decroux for me was the first time I went to his school, and he was there at the as you know, the studio were in the basement, so he was there at the entrance of the basement, and he had just ring the bell, ding, 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 so to tell students that it was time to come into the studio. And he was shaking at that time. He went through different rituals throughout his life, but at my time, he was shaking hands of students, and I shook his hand, and I had the feeling that, okay, this is home. This is where I should be. So it was very, very strong first impression.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So we keep going with the next question, and this is how was Decroux's training methods like?
That's a difficult question.
That-
That's a difficult question because and it could vary according to what the crew wanted to work on. So one thing that people who didn't have the chance to meet Etienne Decroux have to keep in mind is that Decroux was working with people as if you would be staying all your life with him. So he didn't care about, terms, semesters, exam, audition,
Diploma,
diploma, anything. So the method was what he wanted to work at one point. So if he was interested, for example, and I'm sorry if some people don't know those terms, but if he was interested in mobile statuary, he would work on that for 3 weeks without stopping. If he was interested in working on arm movement, that's what he would do. And then, of course, when one became assistant, what was he interested in was to create a piece on the assistant. Now the part of the assistant in teaching was to sort of, maybe the word is not right, but to sort of compensate that supreme anarchy in genius that Decroux had. So when Steve and I were assistant, we would make sure that in the part we were teaching to a class, we would teach fundamental and basic techniques. So then Decroux could arrive and work on your little finger for 1 hour if this is what he wanted to do. And our task as assistant was to make sure that people would learn basic knowledge of corporal mime. So then it's true. Then the master could come in and do whatever he wanted to do. And that was absolutely fine with us. And I loved that. I loved having him coming to the studio and suddenly throwing an idea or wanting to work on something that we never worked on or whatever. So, but you had to be, how would you say, disponible en français. You had to be ready for anything.
Yeah, or anything.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, it was like that. He would rely upon us to do things that were les facultés radicales. Okay, those things that he felt should be done every day, like the bar and ballet. That there should be someone has to do that. Okay, and he would rely upon us to do it. And then sometimes, and when he wasn't there, and then he would show up. He'd come into class, and it depends. Sometimes if we were doing something that was a bit outside that, something a bit more experimental, so to speak, he'd look at us, he'd stop, he'd go, continue. Then he'd go sit in the corner and watch, like that. And 9 times out of 10, what we would be doing, 10 times out of 10, what we were doing was coming from something coming from him.
Yeah, of course.
And then, but he'd look at it and he goes, okay. And then he'd stand up and he would take whatever it was we were doing and go someplace even more with it. So, that was like, it was totally different being the assistant in the rehearsals. And because that was Decroux and Corinne and I, and if there was someone else there, it would be there. And that was working on pieces, and that's a whole different story, that one. So,
Yeah.
So
Okay. All this way to tell us about this your work with the crew. For me, it's very funny because I remember really I know the basement. I know I took some classes in the basement. I saw him greeting people by hand. All that tells me a lot of things. Me, I don't know who else is enjoying more this talk, but I'm enjoying it very, very much. Very, very much. Okay. I'm glad to be here. Okay.
It brings up these things bring up memories. They bring up what deep
yes.
memories.
Yes, of course. Okay. Now we have one question that it's in fact three questions. First is 30 years after Decroux's passing, how have you made the corporeal mind evolve? That's one part, and the other one is how Théâtre de l'Ange Fou works.
Well, the evolution of a technique is a very, very interesting subject. I don't think there is progress in art, in a sense. I don't think someone can say that Stravinsky is better than Vivaldi. So I think art is a globality that goes on and on through the cycle of the world. But so who knows what the Greek were doing when they were doing mime? Who knows what the Etrusc people were doing when they were doing mime? We don't know. So we don't really know. Did Decroux invent something, or did he rediscover something that was already there in the collective memory? And then how someone make a technique evolve, I think, and some people might not agree with that, for me, I think is in teaching over and over again. And when you know, like Steve and I, you know, we taught for almost 35 years now, and sometimes to 40, 50 students every day for 4 hours a day. Of course, the technique evolves. And if you teach also to an international crowd, you know, from people from different background, different ethnic group, different race, different religion, different cultural background, of course, this bring an amazing input in the evolution of a technique. And the more you teach, the more people are learning, the more one is going to find different combination, different possibility, different variation. Decroux for me opened all the doors, but by teaching like we did, of course, everything went up. I don't know if it's the right term, but everything, multiple combination of exercises, of variation, and including the repertoire came up through the teaching. I don't know what you think, Steve.
I think that evolution really started to kick in when we were asked to reconstruct a number of the major works of Etienne Decroux, with L'Homme qui voulait rester debout, with the man who preferred to stand, that show, which you were in,
Yeah.
in the beginning there. So when we were asked by Movement Theatre International in Philadelphia to do this, they had originally said, can you put a few of the old pieces like The Factory and the Trees together? I said yes immediately. This was in February of 1991. And but then when we started to see that, whoa, this is an immense project. And so after about a month, I wrote back to Movement Theatre director Michael Pedretti and told him he had originally asked for a half an hour of work done by maybe 4 people. And I said, it's going to be an hour and a half or more, and it's going to be done by 12 people. And he was a bit surprised because he had to pay for the thing. So anyway, but he said, okay. And then as you know, we spent then that full 1 year going, rehearsing every day. It got to the point where we're rehearsing 7 days a week. And reconstructing the factory, the trees, etc., la méditation. But we did this with the members of the Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou, who were they had all studied with us, but they were also had been there for quite some time, and so they were pretty advanced already technically and as actor mimes. And that's when so I said, okay, let's do it. And it became in the beginning like a super class for us and for them in doing this and making the decisions on how to do this, how to do that, etc. That's when the technique really started to evolve because we had to look at how something was done from an old film from 1940 something or 1950 something, or the last one's 1962, and decide that's the way it was done then by people who had not more than 2 years of training. How would it be done 30 years later in 1991? How would we do that? Well, the technique had evolved vastly over that time, so much so that a counterweight, for example, that the way it was done in 1960 had been so developed from the following years that automatically the technique went up. And the execution of that movement became clear, more and more clear, better and better. And so we had to get those things working in that sense, like that, to do as the show became. Then once we did that, just a short time after that, Corinne and I moved to London. You remember, we moved to London, and what we decided to do then was to start to teach. All of our students, every one of them would learn the repertoire of Etienne Decroux as a part of the study, from the factory, the trees, le toucher, le menuisier, la lavandière, de temps en temps la méditation, le prophète, la femme oiseau, le fauteuil de l'absent, and it just went on and on. So that is how it gave, because people at Decroux, for example, did not work on those pieces. They might work on a bit of the carpenter, a bit of the sewing and the washerwoman, but they did not work on all the pieces, the repertoire of Decroux. And some people thought, well, that's not, he didn't want that. No, I don't think it was that he didn't want to. He didn't have the group around him that could do it yet at that time. But what and then in Paris, as you remember, we taught the carpenter, bits of the carpenter, we'd teach the washerwoman. But then afterwards in London, that's when we started to teach everything. And the result was that evolution you're talking about. By teaching the repertoire of Decroux, that's when it evolved and got better and better and better and bigger. And because with Decroux, you study one piece, you're going to, the deeper you go into that piece, you're going to learn and learn and learn. And it opens doors, like Corinne said, to other things that are possible. That's why it starts to go out like that. So that's, for me, that's the evolution, was through that repertoire.
And Jorge, you had the second part of that question, and that I'm not sure I understand. When you say, how does Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou works, you mean how is the creative process of Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou, or what do you mean by that?
Okay, I have these questions has been prepared by our guest. So we have to ask him, Omar.
We could answer it. How does it work?
Because if it's if I think I understand that how does Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou works, meaning how do we work creatively on a show?
So.
Or,
Probably.
Probably, that's it, right?
Probably. Yes.
Okay.
Omar. Pregunta si lo que quieres saber es el proceso creativo de la compañía. Sí, okay. Yes, that's it. You're right. You are right, Corinne. It's the creative process of Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very good question, because sometimes people that have seen our reconstruction of L'Homme qui voulait rester debout, where you were part of, and some show like Le Petit Dictateur that you were part of as well, would think that those are two different companies.
Yeah.
So it was very clear for Steve and I right away at the beginning that that it was not our goal to continue to present pieces that Decroux had already done perfectly. So, for example, Decroux had done The Carpenter, which is a masterpiece, or The Washerwoman, another masterpiece. So we didn't feel the necessity of doing, I don't know, The Plumber, or The Butcher, or The Baker, or you see what I mean? So for us, it was very clear that what he gave to us as a gift, all that technique, all that knowledge, we could use that, but to put it at the service of our own world and own ideas. And one thing that we wanted to do right away was to get away from short number, nothing wrong with that, but we wanted to do pieces that had the length of a usual theater play. So the first piece we did, called La Croisade, was already 1 hour and 10 minutes. So when you start to consider that length of time and want to use a mime as a creative material, of course you are confronted with different challenges than when you work on a 10-minute pieces. And that's when we started to feel free to use text and music and sets and props and poetry to feed that world we had. So that world of Théâtre de l'Ange-Fou is a bit like I would say, a personal commedia dell'arte. Like we invented a family of character, we invented a world, but the base of the creative material always was corporal mime. And you know that because you were part of those shows as well. So
yeah, I remember when I was just a student at Decroux, before becoming an assistant, he came up to me one time, and as you have probably seen him do, he came up when we were standing there, and he came up and put his face right here, that close to mine, and he stuck his finger up in like that, and he goes, remember, élève, student, there are two things. There's the technique of corporeal mime. That's for everyone. It's neutral. It's for everyone. Then there is my style of the things that come out of me, that I create. He says, that's mine. Don't confuse the two. You say that, and so in other words, don't confuse studying a technique with, so that when you leave, what do you do with it? You don't create imitations of Decroux like that. And you know that it's important, because I've seen that before. And this it's you know, there were people in the time of Chaplin that who did incredible Chaplin imitations, and they did films, a full-length film, and the problem was they weren't funny. Even though the guy looked like Chaplin, it was all of a sudden, Chaplin's not funny anymore. Okay? But it was a little bit like that. So it's just to keep in mind that, because it's like I said in the beginning, and like Corinne said, that a master, which Decroux was undoubtedly, it looks at each person as an individual and knows, in a certain sense, that's why he's a master. He knows what that person can possibly do. And he opens the door in that particular sense. And it's something we've tried to keep in mind in teaching, is that, you know, what people do, don't imitate us, don't imitate me, don't imitate Corinne, do what you have to do.
And one very positive sign of that is that, you know, because we have been teaching for so long, so we are now able to witness what our former students are doing. And what I really like is that everybody has a different style. Mm-hmm. They have the common ground that is corporal mime technique, rigorously practicing or being taught. And then it opened a door to their own personal life. So if I look at people from Spain, or, you know, or England or Italy or Mexico, if I look at their artistic production, nobody looks like one another. So that's very, very positive for me. Yeah. It means that corporal mime give a true autonomy to an artist. Mm-hmm. And not just imitating, you know, a master or a professor.
Of course, I know, I can see it in the shows we create, which are, I don't know how many, there were 40 some since we left Decroux or more. But when I look at them, people have said, yeah, but you did that Decroux show, but they don't look alike. Well, good. I'm glad for that. I'm happy for that. But the thing is that I can see when we're something that we're doing, I can see the influence of Decroux, even though it doesn't look anything like Decroux's work. But I can see it inside there, because, you know, I lived through Decroux's work, and then into that show, and the same thing for Corinne. And I can see it also when I see other productions of another company that studied with Decroux. I can look at it and see something of Decroux in there like that. Which is good. It's an influence, because, you know, that's what can be good about an influence. You have the roots, les racines, you have roots that go back a long ways. So, yeah.
Well, and talking about the roots and talking about this, all these that is coming from very, very far and from those times, and that we can see now, this brings us to this last question, and that is, for you, what is the future of Decroux's legacy?
Well, good question. I think that I'm very optimistic, in fact. Like, you know, like, for example, you are in the university and private sector at the same time. You just told me before the encounter that Omar is teaching corporal mime now in the university world. And you have people all around the world that are doing, teaching, creating, and inventing. So I think that I would say maybe during the 70s or 80s, I would not have been so optimistic because that notion of repertoire to be taught to everybody was not on. You know, we largely contribute to make that possible. We have taught to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are now doing the best they can around the world. So I really think corporal mime is in a good position. It doesn't mean that the media and all the institutions are fair with that art form yet. Okay, this is still a battle to win.
Yeah.
But as far as people being aware of that art form, people being able to learn it in whatever context, you know, private school or institution, I think we are in a good position. Corporal mime is in a very good position. So the Decroux legacy is well alive, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but you know, why not?
And it will, but it goes back to your question of how has it evolved? Well, it's in a constant state of evolution, so it will continue and continue like that. So
but with strong base.
But with a strong base, is, you know, that's why I'm not at all of the type of person who would say, no, you have to forget Decroux. It's not a matter of forgetting Decroux. No, I mean, it's nothing to forget. You know, it's either you have something you want to create, you create it. It's as simple as that. You don't have to think of Etienne Decroux in creating something. You don't. It's as simple as that. The influence is there. That's there in the background. And then when it comes to studying, it's I find it to be the technique of corporeal mime to be the ideal technique for the actor mime of the future. I think it has evolved so much, but I think it can still be even more and more. It's just a matter of people taking the time to do it. Yeah.
But yes. you can say now that it's everywhere. You know, you have people teaching in Japan, in Central America, South America, Australia, all over Europe. So it's good. It's a good position for Etienne Decroux legacy.
Yeah, that's the legacy right there.
Yeah.
That's the what did he do? Well, you've got people talking about him and teaching his technique, teaching that technique he created for everyone, teaching it throughout the world, and the repertoire that is here and there in variations like that. So that's a legacy for you. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yes, that is. So I think that this was it. This was the way we tried to remember Etienne Decroux, passing 30 years ago. And I thank you very, very much. I enjoyed. You have no idea how much to talk with you this time. And I don't know if Omar wants to say something to finish.
Bueno, por el momento, pues son todas las preguntas que tenía planteadas para desarrollar este conversatorio, que la verdad hasta este momento ha sido bastante rico escuchar las experiencias de cada uno de los maestros, del maestro Steven, de la maestra Corinne. La verdad me siento muy complacido con la información que nos han compartido, todas estas experiencias a toda la comunidad que estuvo presente durante esta transmisión y que continúan hasta este momento. Pues por el momento he estado también revisando la transmisión, ha funcionado correctamente, pues hemos tenido un muy buen recibimiento por parte de la comunidad que está viendo la transmisión en este momento. Y de hecho estamos a punto de cumplir la hora de la transmisión que se tenía planteado en cuanto al desarrollo de este conversatorio. No sé si tal vez pudiéramos en estos minutos solamente ya prepararnos para cerrar lo que sería este conversatorio.
Okay.
Bueno, entonces...
Thank you. Thank you very much, Omar. Thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you for this opportunity to, to share with people around the world about Etienne Decroux. So he's very much alive.
Yeah. It's important
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hope we'll see you soon. Yeah. Why not?
Wait, but I hope we see you again, Jorge, and not after 20 years.
Yes, okay. Yes, not 20 years.
Too old for that.
See you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Muchísimas gracias. Nos veremos pronto.
Gracias.
Gracias.